Okay, so this week's parsha is Parshas Kitetse, and there's a very interesting topic, which seems like it's not nogea to any of our lives, because in fact the Gemara says that it may not have ever happened, this topic, but I think it's one of the things that's most fundamental in Judaism, and it's on a topic that we've spoken in the past, but here it's looking at it from a whole different angle. And that's the sugya of Ben Sorer Umoreh. The sugya of Ben Sorer Umoreh is the sugya of a rebellious child, a rebellious son. And the way the Torah says it, the Rashi brings us it's Kitetz la Milchama and Eishes Yifas Torah, and then it ends up being a Ben Sorer Umoreh, and says the pasuk right in the beginning of the parsha, Ki yeh leish Ben Sorer Umoreh, eneinu shomea bekol aviv ubekol imo, v'yisru oto v'lo yishma alehem. There's a child that is not listening to his parents, and they hold him tight. They try to to punish him, and he's still not listening to them. So his mother and father hold him, and they bring him up to the judges. And they tell the judges, the elders of the city, this son of ours is not listening. He's not, and he's eating, and it's the Gemara says that he's eating, he's drinking. He's chayav misa. It's like an unbelievable parsha. Here's the son, and the Gemara tells us that he's like just the age of bar mitzvah. It only could apply for 3 months maybe, that this is nogea to this type of son, and he's rebelling in a type of way that he's stealing money from his parents in order to eat meat and drink wine, and there's a certain shear of how much wine and how much meat. And what do you do with a child who's this rebellious? You kill the child. Now, what's going on over here? He's just a child. You're killing him? He's chayav misa. He just turned bar mitzvah, so he's in the parsha of chayav misa, but he's not old enough, or he's turning. Why is it that we're killing such a child? Now, the Gemara is bothered by this. This is the Gemara in Sanhedrin and Daf Ayin Beis Amud Aleph, Ayin Beis Amud Aleph. The Mishnah on Daf Ayin and on Sanhedrin Ayin Beis Amud Aleph is also the Gemara. And Rashi actually is referring to this here on the Parsha. If you look at Rashi, Rashi says, well, what did this kid do so badly? So the Mishnah over there tells us that he needs to eat meat and he needs to drink wine. So it says Rashi, ויסרו אותו, מטרים בו בפני שלושה ומלקים אותו, בן סורר ומורה אינו חייב עד שיגנוב ויאכל תר תימר בשר וישתה חצי לוג יין, שנאמר זולל וסובל. ונאמר אל תהי בסובי יין ובזוללי בשר למות. Okay, he's quoting that Gemara that you need to steal the money in order to eat meat and drink wine. But then Rashi is addressing the other question that the Gemara addresses. Why is he getting killed? He's a 13-year-old boy. Okay, so he's rebellious. He's a tough teenager. So we're going to kill him? Says the Gemara. Ben Sorer Umoreh neherag al shem sofo. The reason why he's chayav misa is because we could tell sort of the future right now. Higia Torah lesof dato. The Torah goes into the deeper understanding of this child. סוף שמחלה ממון אביו, ומבקש לימודו, ואינו מוצא, ועומד בפרשת דרכים, ומלסתם את הבריות, אמרה תורה ימות זכאי ואל ימות חייו. I'm just reading Rashi, who's quoting the Gemara in Sanhedrin Daf Ayin Beis. And what does he say? The Torah understands where this child is going to end up. He's going to steal all of his parents' money, and he still will not be satisfied with his addictions and the things that he needs to get. And once he's not satisfied with those addictions, what's going to happen? He's going to stand on the roads and he's going to steal from other people. He's going to hurt other people. He's going to ruin society. Therefore, the Torah says, let's execute him now when he's zakai, when he's just a little boy, and he has not done and he has not gone to such low levels of society that he's ruining society and ruining his own life. And ve'al yamut chayav, and let him not be get killed when he's a chayav. So first of all, that itself is like, wow. So the Torah is telling us, if you have these simanim and these clues, which that in itself is such a lesson, the Torah is saying there's certain clues at a certain age. And now the Gemara says there's a machlokas. There's a machlokes in the Gemara. If this ever came, if this is pretty much the machlokes in the Gemara is this just a lesson for us, or does this ever turn into actuality, into something very practical? Meaning, did this ever happen? When the Gemara has a discussion like this, did this ever happen? The Gemara has a similar discussion by Iran Nidachas. The Gemara is pretty much discussing, is the Torah teaching us this so that we should learn a lesson for our lives? This is how much we need to be careful in the trajectory of our path? Or is the Torah saying, no, this thing might actually halachically happen? And there's a machlokas in the Gemara. The Gemara says, lo haya velo nivra, and comes, I think it was Rav Yonasan, one of the Tanas, he says, no, there was such a case. V'ani yashavti al kivro, and I even saw the kever of this one case of Ben Sorer Umoreh where Beis Din actually executed such a child. And the other Shita says that no, it never actually happened. The Torah is just trying to teach us a lesson. So either way, whether it happened or it didn't happen, how is this nogea to us in year 2020, right? This is nogea to us because obviously the Torah is trying to teach us here a specific lesson. It's trying to teach us a lesson that there's a certain path, especially if it's a child at a certain place, and you see that there's a trajectory that is going to take him off to be terrible. And therefore you have to end it right now. You have to end it right now. Now the question is, and this is what's going to elaborate a little bit more this Havana of the understanding of what's going on over here, is that we have, and this is the Gemara also compares, and the Medrash asks this question, and Rashi is referring to this as well. We're going to see the Sifsei Chachamim, which is the commentary on Rashi, how he tries to answer this question as well. That we have another boy at a very similar age that went through a very similar stage, and we find that the Torah did not say we should judge him based on the future. And who is this boy? This is referring to Ishmael. Ishmael, the son of Avram Avinu and Hagar. What happened by Ishmael? Ishmael is metzachek. Ishmael is doing inappropriate things with Yitzchak. And Sarah says, Gareshet ben Ama, you have to kick this boy out of the house. Meaning Sarah had the foresight and the understanding to see that this child at this age is going to ruin my son Yitzchak, and therefore get rid of this son, right? It's very similar to Ben Sorer Umoreh. It wasn't a psak to go ahead and to kill him, but he can no longer be in our family because he's ruining it from the core, from the inside, and therefore we need to send him away. Now, what happens when he gets sent away? He gets sent away, and then the water runs out, as we know in Bereshis, in Parshas Vayera, the water runs out, and his mother, Hagar, can't see his son, her son dying, so she puts him under one of the bushes, and she goes to cry over there. And the boy is crying over there, right? What does it say over there in the psukim? Vatelech vateshev la mineged, harchekem etachavei kashet, far away, as far as the distance of an arrow flying from one place to the next. She says, I don't want to see the boy dying. Vatisait kolavatef, she starts crying. Vayishma Elokim kol anar, the boy is crying also. Hashem listens to the boy, to the voice of the boy. Vayikra malach Elokim el Hagar min hashamayim. Vayomer la malach Hagar, don't worry, kishama el kol anar ba'asher usham. Kumi sei, right? Kishama Elokim el kol anar ba'asher usham, because Hashem Elokim has listened to the voice of the nar ba'asher usham. Elokim is also midas adin. There was a midas adin over here. Is it going to happen? Is it not going to happen? And the Medrash tells us what was the din that was going on in Shemayim. Ki Shamai Elokim el kol anar. Listen to this fascinating Medrash in Bereshis Rabbah. Amar Rav Simon, kafzu malachei hasharet lekatrego. The angels started being mekatrig. This is Ishmael. Amru lefanav ribon haolamim, adam shu atid lehamit et banecha batzama, ata maleo be'er. Ishmaelim are going to kill the Jewish people. When they were thirsty, they're going to give them like these barrels full of hot air, and they're so thirsty they're going to drink them, and then they're going to end up dying. So they're going to kill the Jewish people out of thirst, and you're going to save him by giving him a well of water. So what does he say? HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, Amar lahem achshav ma'u, tzaddik or Rasha. Let's look at him right now. Is he right now a tzaddik, or is he right now a Rasha? So it says, Amrulo, tzaddik, right now he's a tzaddik. Amar lahem eini dan es adam ela b'shaitu. HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, I only judge a person where he's holding right now. And I don't judge him based on the future that his children and his generation are going to destroy Am Yisrael. I'm going to judge him based on right now. Right now, he's a tzaddik. And the Mefarshim ask, and this is Sifsei Chachamim points out, what's going on over here? By Ben Sorer Umoreh, we say, Nidon al Shem Sofa. We're going to judge him based on the future. But by Ishmael, it's right now. So are we judging a person based on right now, or are we judging a person based on the future? HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, I'm not judging him based on the future, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu knows the future. And we, the Beis Din, we need to go ahead and to judge him based on the future and make sure to get rid of him right now before he turns Yamut Zakai ve'al Yamut Chayav. That's the Lashon of the Gemara. That's the Lashon of Rashi. Let him die and get killed as an innocent person as opposed to letting him, get worse and get killed as a chayav. It's an unbelievable question. Now, if you look at the Sifsei Chachamim, he quotes two different answers. And I looked at these answers, and I have a kasha on the answer. One, he's quoting the Mizrahi, one, he's quoting the Minchas Yehuda. And the Mizrahi says, you know what the difference between Ishmael and the Ben Sorer Umoreh? He says, the Ben Sorer Umoreh is nidon based on the future because he started getting involved in specific things that these things will end up leading him down a wrong path, meaning he's already addicted to these types of food and wine and alcohol and I guess drug abuse nowadays. And those things, he's already in a cycle that it's going to end up that he's going to take his parents' money, he's going to take other people's money, he's going to end up killing people, he's going to end up ruining society. So therefore, since the steps of his digression of where he's going to go started right now, so therefore you could judge him based on now. But Ishmael, the future is not really connected to right now. He didn't really start anything right now that's going to show that he's going to maybe kill the Jewish people in the future. So my question on that is that it says Mefurish in Rashi that Ishmael was metzachik, right? She sees that the Ben Amma is metzachik, and Rashi quotes, what does metzachik mean? That he was doing avodah zarah, Giluy Arayis, and Retzicha. Imash already was starting to kill. He was starting to do inappropriate behaviors, which is how he's going to end up in the future. So therefore, what does it mean that Ishmael didn't start the negative behavior? He already started. That's why she's kicking him out of the house, because he started the negative behavior. So I don't understand the Mizrahi. That's my kasha on the Mizrahi. And the Minchas Yehuda that the Sifsei Chachamim quotes, he says, which is another fascinating thing, but I don't understand it. He says that Beis Din Shel Mala, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, does not judge based on the future. But Beis Din Shel Mata, up to us, we do judge based on the future. Now, for me, that's counterintuitive. The Beis Din Shel Mala, Hashem, he knows the future. If anyone is going to judge based on the future, it should be Hashem. And us, human beings, Beis Din Shel Mata, we should not be judging based on the future. So what's Pshat? Why is it that Ishmael was Nidon B'Shaito Ba'asher Hu Sham? Let's look at the person as he is right now and not what he's going to become. Whereas Ben Sorer Umoreh, we look at what he's going to become. And I think that this is really the lesson for us. I think there is one word in the Parsha, in this Parsha of Ben Sorer Umoreh, that repeats itself 3 times, which I think is very fundamental to Chinuch. And I think it's fundamental to us and to our relationship with our children. And I think this is the lesson that the Torah is teaching us. And the Torah is teaching us, this is where you should have your red lights, that something is going wrong and it's getting worse. And this is the sign of that you need to be worried right now, even though the kid is only 13 years old. And you're like, oh, he's just 13. He's not doing anything wrong. It's not that big of a deal. Okay, so he stole some money. He started getting, okay, he's just doing teenager stuff. Where are the red lights flashing for the parents to recognize, okay, we better step in over here? I think that's really what the lesson that the Torah is telling us. Whereas HaKadosh Baruch Hu by Ishmael did not see those lessons, and I'll explain. There's one word that repeats itself in the Parsha of Ben Sorer Umoreh 3 times, but we do find it in the Parsha of Ishmael. And that word is shama, is listening. Right? Let's look again at the pasuk. Ki yeh leish Ben Sorer Umoreh, enenu shomea Bekol avivu bekol imo. He's not listening to his father and to his mother. Ve'yisru oto ve'lo yishma lehem. And they hold on to him. They start punishing him, but he's still not listening to his parents. And then v'tafsuto, they hold him, they bring him to the Beis Din. What do they tell the Beis Din? Ve'amru el ziknei iro, benenu ze sorer umoreh, enenu shomea bekolenu zolel v'soveh. He's not listening to us, and therefore he's eating and he's behaving in an addictive manner. The concept of not listening, and this is really, we spoke about this, that in Sefer Dvarim, you have the word, it's the first time that we learn about the concept of lamad, of learning. The shorish of lam and mem dalet appears for the first time in Sefer Dvarim. It's when we become a people of teachers, that every parent is given the charge to teach his children, right? V'shinantam levanecha, v'dibartavam, v'limadetem osavas b'neichem. There's another word that constantly repeats itself, and that is shema. Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad. Shema Yisrael, Atem Nichnasim Hayom. Right? It's Leman Yishmu Ve'iro. Even in Parshas Re'eh, Re'anochi Nosem Lifnechem Hayom, Es HaBracha V'es HaKlala, Es HaBracha Asher Tishma'u. The blessing that you should listen. The concept of Shemia in Judaism is a concept that encompasses the entirety of a person. Rabbeinu Yonah in Sharei Tshuva, chapter 2, Chelek Yud Beis says, and he quotes this from the Gemara in Baba Kama, Amru Rabbeinu Zichronam Livracha, Ki ha'ozen nichbedet mishar ha'evarim. If you were to choose one limb, which is the most important limb, which limb would you choose? Which function of our face would you choose? So I don't know if hearing is the most important. Says the Gemara, yes. Shim simas eino, if chas v'sholom, in the dinim of Baba Kama, of hurting somebody and you have to pay him, if chas v'sholom, somebody, a Jew, blinded another Jew, he needs to pay him dmei eino, the value of the eye, which is very expensive, but he needs to pay him monetary value that he lost the eye. Chersho, but if you make a person lose his hearing, no sin lo dmei kulo, you have to pay for the entirety of the person. Veheina adam chayav lavodas Hashem yisbarach beivarav, v'chushav kulam ki lavodaso yitzarim kemo shekasuv kol poal Hashem lemaneu. And he says, since the ear is the most important limb, and all of our limbs are here to serve Hashem, he says that is the reasoning why ozen shoma tuchachat chaim bekerev chachamim talim. Perush ra'ui lishkon ben hachachamim achrei asher yakshiv letochachatam. The concept of listening, and we mentioned this, that by Western society, right, when you want to say that you understand something, what do you say? You say, oh, I see. I see. When you speak about an understanding, you say, I have an insight. Or you want to look to the future, you say, I have foresight. Or I have hindsight, right? Those are always words of understanding in Western society. By Judaism, it's always about hearing. It's tashma. Come and hear when you're trying to understand a sugya. And you say, it's shma mina. I hear from this. I derive from this. I understand from this. Or lo mashmali. It's not mashma, meaning I don't understand this, right? Ani shomeya doesn't just mean that I heard what you said or that I'm not listening to what you said. Is that I'm not understanding. The Shemia in Judaism is the understanding of what our life is about and what our mission in this world is about. That's what the Shemia in Judaism is. By the way, this is why not in modern Western society, but in the original, in the Greek culture and in the pagan society, their gods always needed to be visible. It was the structure, it was the architect, it was the monuments. It's always something physical that you could connect to. They wanted to, because if you can't see it, it's not real, right? I can't see God, so I have to see something. I have to create something that makes it real. But in Judaism, seeing God is through the ears. The only time we saw sort of something that was God by Maimon Har Sinai, V'chol ha'am roim es hakolos. We saw the sounds, which we don't understand what that means, but it was another aspect, a deeper understanding of seeing the sounds. But it's all about the sounds. It's all about the understanding and the intellectual understanding and the emotional and spiritual understanding of that connection with the Kodesh Baruch Hu. Throughout the parsha of Ben Sorer Umoreh, and as Rabbeinu Yonah says, that a person who's not able to listen, he can't have a relationship. The secret to having any successful relationship in a marriage with our children, with our parents, is the ability to listen to one another, to listen to what my spouse says, to listen to my children, what are their needs, and for the children to be able to stop and to listen and internalize the lessons and the messages of their parents. And if the Ben Sorer Umoreh is not listening, Einenu Shomea B'kol Aviv V'chol Imo, there's a disconnect of the Mesorah. He's not getting the messages of his parents. He's acting in a negative way. Now, where it about Ishmael? If you look at the parsha of Ishmael, by Ishmael, it says, Ki shama Hashem el kol anar, right? Ishmael was 17 years old when he left the house. And because of Avram Avinu, says the Medrash in Yalkut Shimoni, Remez Tzadi Hey, that he went and he the moment they got to the desert, Hagar, his mother, started going back to Avodah Zarah of her father's house of Mitzrayim, and then they lost the water. It was like a miraculous spring of water that was in their jug, and then they were thirsty. And then what did Ishmael do? The Gemara, the pasuk only says that the mother, Hagar, was crying. But then the Malach says, stop crying because Hashem listened to the voice of your son. Now, it doesn't say that the son was crying, but apparently the son was also crying. So the Medrash says, what's going on over here? Amar, he went to the corner and he was dying of thirst, and he says, Elokei Avram Avi, yesh lefanecha, totzos mavis, kachas nafshi v'lo amos batzama, v'netar lo shenemar ki shama Elokim al kol ana. Ishmael, at this time of need, when he was losing his life, what does he do? He turns to Hashem, meaning he suddenly hears the lessons of his father, Avram Avinu. And he says, Master of the universe, the God of my father, Avram Avinu, please listen to me. I know that you control the whole world. I know that you decide life and death, and I know that you could choose to take me right now, and I don't need to die in thirst. Please take me right now. And then Hashem sends a malach, and he sends to Hagar, I heard the voice of the son. I'm going to actually keep him alive. Meaning Ishmael at that moment was showing, I still have a relationship. I still hear. I'm still calling out to Hashem. There's still a relationship of understanding the lessons I learned from my father. And that's why HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, Midas Adin, let's look at him right now. Yes, he might get worse. He might go off the derech. His children might be off the derech. But right now, there's a connection. And if there's a connection, that means that this son, this child right now, will come back. Maybe his children will be off. But this person that I need to judge is still a good person. And therefore, I need to save him. And in fact, we find Rashi in Bereshit says that it says Yitzchak and Ishmael came to bury Avram Avinu. That Yitzchak was ahead of Ishmael because Ishmael did tshuva. Even though Ishmael was older, Ishmael told Yitzchak, you go ahead. He respected his younger brother, and he said, you're the one who's continuing our father's legacy. Ishmael did tshuva at the end of his life because there was still a point of connection, of listening. And that's the bottom line. When we're talking about, this is a very difficult parsha in our situation. In our generation, there's almost no family that doesn't deal with this situation of a child that is not going the path of us, right? The path of the parents. Now, being a parent, this is something that's very crucial. Being a parent has a paradox. On the one hand, we want our children to continue our legacy. We see our children as an extension of ourselves. And therefore, we want them to continue with the values that we embody and that we've educated them. On the other hand, we know and we understand, and we even want this for our children, that our children are their own unique individuals. And we want them to create their own unique path. And we want them to own their path and their passion and to believe in it and to live their lives to the fullest and to make sure that they're happy. And there's a conflict over there. Do I want my child to be an extension of me and to go on my way? And do I want him to be independent? Now, we want everything. We want him to be independent, but to continue what I want, right? So we want both of that. That's what gives us that nachas. But there's a paradox. And therefore, we need to be able to give certain core values of what our family stands for, what our nation stands for, what Am Yisrael stands for. And we need to make sure that those core values are embedded, and yet they have their flexibility around it, which means, a rabbi's son doesn't have to become a rabbi, and a doctor's son doesn't have to become a doctor. Or it's not just the professions, it's also, there's Kenai Nahara in Am Yisrael, there's a lot of different shvatim, a lot of different camps, a lot of different, hashkafos. There's Hasidus, and there's Litvish, and there's Tzioni, and there's Modern Orthodox, and there is Breslov, right? Chabad. There's so many different ways in which we could connect to the same mission, but the things around it are different. And a lot of times we're very comfortable and very nice to people that are in our camp, that are in our comfort zone. And that's really our comfort zone. That's why we're in a shul like this, because we believe that our shul should have values of believing in Eretz Yisrael, in Medinat Yisrael, in praying for the Yeshuv of Eretz Yisrael. We have a shul that has certain values. We have a kehila. We have, every community has their values. Now, we respect other people, but then once they start saying other opinions, it's different. And it gets much harder when it's in our own children. And it gets even harder for all parents when the children are saying, I may not be so interested in Judaism at all. I'm not interested in this, right? And he's saying, and he's sort of disconnecting. But usually, and this is our chizuk, and that's the point for parents and for children, is there still shama aleim? Is there still a relationship? Never end the relationship. Never say, I'm never talking to you again because you're not going in the way that I want you to go. If a parent does that, he's causing his son to be lo shama aleim. Kol zman that there is a relationship. You never give up. A child could understand. Sometimes it takes him 10 years, 20 years, even 40 years. And he says, you know what, now I understand what my parents meant and what they said and what were the values that they gave over to us. Different children start learning at different ages. Different children start becoming serious at different ages. And even adults, right now, adolescence has pushed itself into the 20s. And you never know the impact that could be. You never know the impact down the line that could be on this specific child or on his children. And therefore, it's important to always be in the relationship of Shama Aleichem. The Ben Sorer Umoreh, the reason why he gets killed, again, whether it happened or not, it's still the lesson, the concept of it, is because Lo Shama Aleichem. Because he's the one who says, I am totally disconnecting from my parents. I never want to listen to them. I don't want to talk to them again. And he says, I don't want to have any relationship with them. And sometimes children do that, but just for a little bit. It's because they need their space so they can be their own individuals. They feel that the parents are too much saying, you are an extension of me. You are an extension of me. You have to be like me. So then they say, no, I want to be totally independent. They push to the other side because they feel that one side is too strong. And therefore they're saying, I don't want to speak. But really, a child in his teva wants to listen to his parents. He wants to call them up. He wants to be encouraged. He wants the father that says, you know what, I'm proud of you. And why is that hard for us to tell our children, I'm proud of you? And sometimes it's hard for parents to go up to them and to say, I really like what you, even if we don't fully agree with what they're doing, but they're doing something that other people feel is special, right? That other people are, and to say, I'm proud of you. And then the child feels like, wow, there's a connection. There's the Shama Aleichem. And then if you're proud of me, so then I can listen a little bit more. And I think this is really the lesson of Ben Sorer Umoreh that is so relevant to our lives, so relevant to raising our children, and so relevant for children, to listen to their parents, to yes, right? If there are children out there, and we're all children as well, to recognize the value of learning from the previous generation, which is one generation that is closer to Maimon Har Sinai, learning not just from our parents, but from our grandparents. And I think that is something that is the key word over here is Shama. And you find that Ishmael was Shomea. He was willing to call out to Hashem, and therefore the Malach was Kishama Hashem al Kol Anar. Hashem listens to the Nar, and this is really what the month of Elul is all about. The month of Elul, we started blowing the shofar last week on Friday. What's the point of blowing the shofar? You're hearing the kolos. And as the Rambam says, Uru Yesheinim Mishnaschem. A lot of times we fall asleep. This summer was a difficult summer. We were home. We were on Zoom. We didn't have our regular shiurim and our regular programming. But Uru Yesheinim Mishnaschem. It's time to wake up. It's time to listen to the voice of our Father, of Avinu Sheva Shamayim. And that's why we blow the shofar. We have an entire month to wake us up, to listen to the voice of Shamayim, to try to connect to that voice a little bit more, to listen to our inner voice, which is the voice of Shamayim within ourselves, and to maybe reach out to our children, and to rebuild and to remend that connection, and to say, Baruch Hashem, we all have great relationships with our children, but to even up that a notch. Every child wants to get a random call from his parents telling them, you know what, I'm really proud of you. I'm proud of you, my son. This was a difficult year, but you really stepped through and you were there. And when we give words of encouragement like that, so that builds that relationship in such a strong way that it won't be shattered and it won't be hurt ever. And it will continue. They will continue our Mesorah, L'Dorei Doros. I want to thank everyone for joining us today. It's a real pleasure being here with everyone, as always.